What's up, guys? It's KB. Make sure you subscribe to the Underground Sports Philadelphia YouTube channel. Click the bell icon down below so you don't miss a single video from us. And thanks for tuning in to another video from Underground Sports Philadelphia. Now let's get into it.
Philadelphia, baby, you're going to love it. Best sports fans in the world. Actually, the worst, but that's what makes them the best.
Welcome back to Top Bins, the show, bringing you all the action from the Premier League and Serie A, England and Italy. I am your host, Matt, joined by my co-host, Dom. Dom, how are you?
I'd be better if you didn't have that godforsaken jersey on.
Okay. You act like I rolled up with an Inter jersey. I think this is pretty neutral.
Listen, I get it. Jumping on the bandwagon. I see how it is.
Wow. Dom, that's really hurtful. You know, the other week, I remember you not saying anything like that when I was wearing my Sorrento jersey. So I guess now...
Listen, that's a tasteful jersey. This one right here. It's better than an Inter jersey, I will say that. If you popped up here with the Inter jersey, I don't know if I'd be able to speak to you again.
Well, you are not going to like my outfit for next week. So
great.
I got to tell you, this is an audio format, so I think not speaking to me ever again, it'd be tough to keep doing this if you're going to really commit to that.
Top Bins is just going to cease to exist.
Is that all it takes?
Hey, listen. If it's an R9, if it's one of those like black and gray R9 like jerseys.
Well, I don't have $400, so I'm not getting one of those.
Maybe I'd be able to understand that one, but you know.
It is the SerieA preview. Did I say preview? Preview. Pretend that I said it correctly. It is the SerieA preview. We're also going to recap the Premier League weekend that was and catch you up on any news stories that happened. Like, I don't know, Harry Kane leaving England, I think. That happened in between our taping. I don't know, maybe the most embarrassing transfer saga ×2 that I've ever been a part of. We're going to start with SerieA, though, because that kicks off this weekend. Very excited for that. We'll have both our leagues back in full swing, which is fantastic. It's going to follow the same format if you listened to our Premier League preview last week. If you did not, check it out. It's not something that I think is, even after 1 week, is going to already be out of style. I think you can listen to that and still get good tidbits out of that. But if you did not listen, you're just tuning in for this one. We just break down the top 6 of each league, the bottom 3 who's getting relegated. We pick a team that we think will overachieve and underachieve, and then we pick our top scorer. Couldn't find any like over-unders for the Serie A season like we did for Premier League, but I think we'll be able to fill in the gaps. Let's take a look at the top 6 that we both predicted, shall we? I see a lot of the same names. I will start. I picked Inter as my champion. I also did this last year, so we'll see. I picked Inter, Milan, Napoli as my top 3, and I highlight them. I feel like these are the best 3 teams in Italy. Everyone else you can honestly put in any kind of order from 4 to 8, 4 to 7, and I'm probably like, yeah, I could see that. I could honestly see just about any other team in Italy from those like 4 to 8 spots in any kind of order. I really do. To me, though, Inter, Milan, and Napoli are the 3 best teams. I think they're the 3 teams that have had, in some ways, interesting summers, but largely good summers. And I think are returning a good cast. And 2 of those 3 are also returning their managers even.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot to be positive about. You also had the same top 3, but just in a different order. Why don't you just give me your top 3? We'll talk about why we chose opposite sides of Milan here for the
Listen, baby. Listen. Is there anything else you'd expect from me? Look,
nope.
When Milan is this competitive with a team where they've built on one of their main issues, which was depth, especially on the wings and in the midfield. They're a much, much stronger team this year. Obviously, they still have maybe 1 or 2 more signings that they need to do, maybe another defender, definitely another striker. But if they are able to at least get that striker deal done with whoever, I don't know who, I don't really have anybody in mind. I really do think that this could be the best team in Italy, but that is very tough because they're going to be competing with your 3rd place, but my 2nd place team, the crest that you have on your chest today, Napoli. I have them finishing 2nd. It's just very tough to back-to-back a league. I think that they'll still be very good, But I do think that the entire league has gotten to see them for a season and have seen, when they've struggled and what may need to be done to counter Kvaratskhelia and Osimhen. Not saying that they won't still perform very well, but they're losing their best defender this year. So it's going to be tough to try to repeat as champions. I have Inter in third. They're a very good team. Lautaro is going to be a man on a mission. They brought in Thuram. Fratesi is another person they signed, which is huge for them. So I do think that, they're going to perform well, but I do think that Milan and Napoli are just a tad bit better than they are.
For me, it's hard to separate these three teams. I think they all have great strengths. I also think that each team has a huge question mark coming into the season for me. Milan, I think, have gone for a scattershot approach to their transfer market, which usually does not work. Usually when you buy 5-6 players all 15 to 20 million, it's really usually not a method that works out. They're taking risk on guys too that have also had problems with injuries. I still, like you said, striker situation is a little unclear to me. Midfield situation is also unclear to me. I don't feel super confident about that. That was a big weakness of theirs last season, even with Tonali and a healthy Benacer. For Inter, I think there are question marks as well, even though I picked them as my champion. They also don't really have a really established actual striker. They have Lautaro, of course, and Marcus Thuram, but Thuram is kind of more like a wing player. He's not necessarily like a number 9 type of midfielder, striker. I'm sorry. In the midfield, they lose some experience with Brozovic. Do I think Fratesi can come in and do a better job? Sure, but you've also got Barella. Defensively, you lose Skriniar, you lose Onana at the back. I don't know. I think there's questions to be had there. I don't love Jan Sommer as an Onana replacement, but it's not the worst. And for Napoli, you lose Spalletti. You have Rudy Garcia, who's not, to me, not my favorite manager. He's not someone I really love. Yes, you lose Kim Min-jae as well. But outside of that's really their biggest, player loss. It certainly seems like Osimhen is staying, which I think is a huge deal for them. And I wouldn't actually be surprised if Napoli do repeat because they've largely been able to keep this squad together. I wouldn't say teams necessarily figure them out, but I think Kvaratskhelia had a really hot start to the season. I think teams really started to box him out, but that still did nothing to eliminate the threat of Osimhen and what he was able to do. So really, like I said, I'm picking Inter to win because I think out of all the managers of those three, he's the best. And I actually think Inter underperformed in the league last year, but you saw them win Coppa Italia, get to a Champions League final. And I actually think that's their level. I think they were very good. I think they were one of the better Italian teams on their day. I think they could have beaten most clubs in Europe. They were very close to beating Manchester City and denying them a treble, I think if they can find that consistency over the course of a season, that's going to be the title for them. But I also think that of Milan. I think if Milan find consistency, we've seen it done. We've seen Rafa Leao carry this team to a title over the last 8 or 9 weeks. And I think they lose to Tonali. I think the thing that people have not talked enough of, though, is that I'm not going to say Tonali is replaceable, but to me, it is easier to find or move around the Tonali replacement than it is Maignan or Teo Hernandez or Rafa Leao. To me, those three are much more irreplaceable positions that are going to cost you a lot more money. And I actually think Tonali selling him, getting a high price, and again, I don't love the transfer method that they've chosen, but try and just plug a lot of gaps, a lot of holes in the squad. I don't think that's the worst idea that you could have done.
What I think is interesting about them is that when the season that they won the Scudetto, they were playing more of a 4-3-3 instead of that 4-2-3-1 that everybody says is Pioli's MO. And the reason was because they had 3 really good midfielders in Tonali, Kessie, and Benacer. Now, obviously, Benacer, had surgery, so there's going to be a delay for him coming back. But, you're adding guys like Reinders, who, Xavi wanted him for a reason at Barcelona. He's a good two-way guy. He kind of can play defensively, but is also kind of gifted in going forward. That's sort of like your Tonali replacement, and then you have a guy like Yunus Musa who's also been signed and is kind of of the same mold as Kessie instead of being what people are saying is another replacement for Tonali, and they're trying to figure out which one is where. But I do think that if Pioli needs to change up the squad for certain games and things like that, or they need to solidify the midfield. I think that 4-3-3 that he had 2 years ago can be run with some of the signings that they brought. I do like your point that you did bring up, though, about, just kind of scattering out the signings and just bringing a lot of people in for a good chunk of change. We saw this happen to Milan before when they signed guys like Andre Silva and what's his name? Rodriguez, the left back, and numerous other guys, right? I think that was the same time that they brought Romagnoli in and all that kind of stuff. So it's and it didn't work out, right? Milan was still, one of the laughing stocks of Italy when it came to the big teams and stuff like that. And hopefully this isn't the case. I do think injuries can be an issue, but if, like you said, if they're consistent, I think they're one of the best teams in the league, if not the best. The attacking signings that they brought on the right wing will, I think, in turn, give Leao more space to work one-on-one, which I think they need so much. You know what I mean? That's one of the things, like Napoli kind of had that last year, where you have a couple different choices on that right-hand side and you have Osimhen. So worrying about that allowed Kvaratskhelia to get one-on-one. And then when they had to box him off, like you said, Osimhen is the guy that they step in. So hopefully that's the case with Milan this year, because that'll make them really, really dangerous.
Yeah, for me, like I said, I think those three are kind of in a tier of their own. And I could see any three of those winning the title. Outside of that, it's a harder path, I think, for a lot of these other clubs at the top in Serie A. In fourth, I picked Lazio. I had them in my top 4 last year as well. Notably, they're out without Milinkovic-Savic this year, but outside of that, no real big departures, but also no real big incomings. But I do love Maurizio Sarri. I think he's a great manager. I think that they'll be good enough to probably finish top 4 again. But like I said, anywhere from 4 to 7, you can put them in any order, and I don't hate it. I had Juventus finishing in 5th and Roma finishing in 6th. Juventus, I really don't know what to expect from them this year. It was pretty toxic at times last season, and just seems like Allegri is really just past it and does not have the juice anymore. And the positive, though, if you're trying to spin it, is they'll have Vlahovic healthy, with Chiesa hopefully healthy for the full season, and hopefully you can kind of kickstart that partnership again. But you're without guys like Di Maria now. Quadrado has moved on. You're replacing him with Weah. McKennie, who they tried casting off all summer, is still there and is probably going to even be starting for them. There's no Bonucci this season. Like there's a lot. There's a lot to change there. Roma, for me, are outside of the top 4 in my prediction. Again, similarly, I like that they got their business done early, but I don't love the business that they've done. Now they did just get Paredes and Renato Sanchez on loan from PSG. They're just every summer taking a hit on the latest PSG midfield castoff. They also got Houssam Aouar like earlier in the window. I do like maybe the idea of that midfield working together and what that could be, but they don't have really a great striker. Tammy Abraham is out injured, probably not going to be back till like January. Andre Bellotti is really fallen off in terms of goal scoring. I have questions about Roma, and they lose Ibanez, who was a very good defender for them. They get Ndeka, but it remains to be seen how much he replaces him. So I think similar to how the top 3 all have question marks for me, I think everyone else has even bigger question marks and bigger concerns about consistency and quality. And I'm remembering them last year and how inconsistent a lot of these teams were week to week, and that I just didn't have a ton of faith in them.
Yeah. I like what you say about Roma. Is Wijnaldum coming back? I haven't seen any news about him. Do you know anything about like him potentially playing this season for them?
Wijnaldum is a mystery to everyone. One player that I wish that we still just had. But
it's a terrible injury that happened to him last year.
He's back at PSG. Who knows what his future holds?
No. Oh, okay. So I didn't know that he went back to PSG. So I do like
last year, and this year they're rolling the dice with 2. They're getting Sanchez and Paredes now. So.
Yeah. I do like what they did to bolster the midfield. And I know that an absence of a true striker for them is not there, but I think that Dybala can step in and just, be a guy as long as he stays healthy. He can put a scoring load on his back and kind of, let Roma kind of stay afloat for a while. So it remains to be seen. Once Tammy comes back, I mean, that would be wonderful. But I do have them finishing fourth just because I kind of like what they've done in the transfer window. And then right beneath them, I have Atalanta fifth. They are using the Hoyland money to bring in a couple guys, most notably Gianluca Scamacca. Excuse me, I said that. I was butchered the last name, Scamacca. But they also signed the golden boy, my golden boy, who just never seemed to get along with Pioli and get along well at Milan. They brought in Charles de Ketelaere. I do think that Atalanta could be the place for him to really, kind of come into his own in Serie A. He now has a year of experience in the league.
I'm looking forward to him going to Chelsea next season for 130 million pounds.
Dude, I think that Atalanta won't be as much of a high pressure situation as Milan was. They were looking for that number 10. They thought he was the number 10. It didn't work. They tried to play him as a number 8 at times. That didn't work. They tried using him as a number 9. It didn't work. So, and Milan fans are very ruthless on Twitter. So,
by the way, awful business from Milan.
Yeah, terrible business.
And listen,
terrible.
A lot of talk about Maldini and how unfairly he was let go. That one hangs on his head, brother. One is.
I'll say this. Yes, I was very angry and sad when Maldini was let go, but Moncada knows what he's doing, and I think that their activity this transfer window kind of is. I don't want to say a foolproof way to get the fans on your side, but it's a very high risk, high reward type thing. You know what I mean? Back to Atalanta, I do think that there wasn't many other notable outgoings for them, right? It's mainly just that Hoyland transfer. So I think that bodes well. Gasparini can always get the best out of his players, so they're always a dark horse. I think they finished fifth. I have Juventus sixth. You mentioned two guys if they're back healthy. I'm going to mention a third, Paul Pogba, if he's healthy. I think that the pace of Serie A. Listen. I think Serie A is the right league where he can get away with some of his flashy shit. Listen, I believe in him. I believe in him all the time. I'm always a fan. I'm always a fan.
You still fucking believe in Santa too? Come on, Jesus Christ.
Wait, what? What?
Yep.
Nah.
Your bubble. Paul Pogba is going to look great in Al-Ali green. I don't know.
Bonucci is confirmed gone. Where did he go?
I think he's just not with the team. I think he's.
I saw rumors that Lazio may sign him.
Wow.
That's a match made in heaven, right?
Yeah. With his history of racial comments, maybe.
Yeah. I also saw that they're rumored for Hugo Lloris. I think that I kept Lazio out of my top 6. I don't know. I'm just not convinced, especially losing Sergej Milinkovic-Savic. I think that's huge, and with no notable signings coming in just yet, they just don't have me sold as compared to these other teams. If they do happen to sign a guy like Bonucci and Hugo Lloris, they could be battling for 4th, for 5th, but. Like you said, it's a toss-up anywhere between, I think, 4 through 8 in the league. So it's really just who do you pick. I hate that I had to give Roma flowers, but I do like what they did. And you can never count out Mourinho. So, yeah.
He might be
Roma,
able to, though.
Roma, Atalanta, Juventus.
Fair enough. Like I said, I don't really take a ton of issue with any of the rankings at that point because I think any teams. And it was tight last season within those spaces, too. So I'm looking forward to that. It seems like it's going to be a very competitive year at the top. And even if one of those teams broke in and was a title challenger, I wouldn't be shocked by that. I don't know how many of them are really capable of that in terms of quality and consistency, but I also did not expect Napoli to win the league by 16 points last year, and they did. So, expect the unexpected, I think, with Italy. Let's talk the opposite end of the table, who we expect to get relegated. I had New Boys Cagliari going back down Lecce, who had a terrible second half of the season last year. I think they're going to continue that for him and find their way back to Serie B. And Hellas Verona, who only stayed up because of the playoff last season. I just think that they've really struggled for quality, and last season they sort of had a miraculous escape out of the bottom three. I think they've been circling the drain, and the drain is now opening up to swallow them.
Yep. I think Hellas Verona goes down easily. I don't think they're last place, but I do have them 18th. I don't believe in a provincial club like Frosinone ever. And then I also have Cagliari going down. Just another team that's in a terrible spot in the league.
I take a little issue with Frosinone because they're managed by one of my favorite Italian players ever, Fabio Grosso, who has one of my favorite goals. My favorite goal celebrations. Mr. Clutch himself scores the penalty to win Italy the World Cup. I just give my man
a lot of people have Genoa finishing in the bottom three. I don't think that happens. I do think that their forward that they signed, the Argentinian Retegui, who has Italian nationality as well. I think he plays for Italy, right? Scored on his Italian debut. I think that he's a special talent. And I think that he can kind of help Genoa stay out of the relegation zone, which I guess that kind of, if you want, I can keep talking about that because that's kind of who I have as my overachiever is Genoa. Like I said, I think.
Do you know? I just want to ask you. You know who the manager of Genoa is?
No, and I'm thinking Bologna, but. Yeah, no. Isn't it? It's not Shevchenko anymore. It used to be.
Alberto Gilardino, one of the goats.
Yes, AC Milan and Fiorentina goat right there. That's it's my man's. You want to talk about Fabio Grosso? Alberto Gilardino did win that World Cup as well with them. So I do think that Retegui is a guy that can kind of help. Bolster them. I'm not saying this team's going to finish mid-table, but I'm thinking that they're going to keep themselves safe from relegation, which is an overachievement in my eyes and the eyes of every pundit out there and every analytic out there, because they're saying they're finishing 19th or 20th. Like they have a chance of finishing either one. So I don't think that. I do think that Genoa overachieves and makes it out of the relegation zone, forcing teams like Frosinone and Hellas Verona to have to fight with another team like Spezia for those bottom spots.
Yeah. So that's your overachiever. What about your underachiever? Because
I kind of talked about it earlier.
Lazio up a little bit, but yeah, I guess you think the impact of losing Milinkovic-Savic is that much, and that they really haven't progressed.
No. I mean, they signed like Kamada, right? And didn't they sign a striker, Castellanos? But Castellanos was playing for Girona in Spain. I don't, you're talking about an MLS guy that played for maybe a season or two. Now he's in Serie A. He's got a lot to prove. I'm not sold on it. Kamada was a guy that was being touted by Milan. That transfer never went through. I do think he's a good player, but I don't think he's kind of like the Luis Alberto replacement, but there's nobody to replace Sergei Milinkovic-Savic, and that's a huge. I think it's more of a loss than people are saying it is.
I think you're sleeping on Maurizio. Sorry, that's all I'm saying. Man does magic. That's all I'm gonna leave it at. My overachiever, I picked Torino. I think they could have a really strong year. I think they're an established striker away from maybe even having like a pretty comfortable like top half of the table finish. I really like their squad. I think they're a good spot. I think they've had some stability since flirting with relegation a few years ago, and I just like them. I always have a little bit of soft spot for Torino.
Balaya Diaz is still there, right?
Yeah, and I just think Diaz at Salernitana, but
sorry, yeah, I got my
similarly color scheme squad.
Excuse me.
But I believe in Torino. My underachiever is Bologna. I just think last year kind of an ideal season for them in a lot of ways in terms of health, and no longer with Arnautovic, who was a good goal scorer for them. I just have some question marks about their squad in general. But Thiago Motta is a really good coach. This is certainly not me picking against him. I think he's done well in the top flight, and they have some players I do like. But it just feel like maybe last season was just a slight overperformance. Where they were almost flirting with European spots at one point. I'm not sure that that's the level that they'll find themselves on. I think this is a little bit of a come down year for them in their next season.
Yeah.
Top scorer. Dom, I picked Victor Osimhen. It's hard for me to pick anyone else. It is hard for me to pick anyone else. There's not many other. When I was looking at all the teams, I was looking at their forwards, and I'm just thinking to myself, like, who's really going to get up there? Now, I don't mind your pick at all. I think that's really the only other name I could think of that just before the season that in my mind will be competitive with him. But last year I picked Immobile. Just did not have the juice, even when he played, but then he had some injury issues and things like that. There's not a lot of high level number nines. You look at Milan, right? A team we expect to be with them. I think Rafael's probably going to end up being their top goal scorer, but this is a guy that's topping out at a great season for Rafael would be like 15, 16 goals. That would be like, but likely somewhere 10 to 13 is realistic for Rafael this season. That's a good number. That's, winning the Golden Boot for that.
When he finished, I think he was like third or fourth in the league last year.
Right. Immobile, again, I don't know that he has the juice anymore to be hitting, like into the 20s for goal scoring. Roma don't really have an established striker, like I mentioned. Andrea Bellotti is not a guy that's going to be getting you those numbers anymore. Tammy Abraham is going to miss half a season. Juventus, maybe Vlahovic, but I just think a lot is going to have to change with the way that club plays to get there. Atalanta's interesting, but again, we haven't seen them have those goal explosions like we sort of associate with them. Like, you just go down the line, and there's just not.
Scamacca will do a lot of scoring for them, but like it's not going to be enough to keep up with the pace of Osimhen.
He's a new striker, though, to a new team. There's no guarantee that he starts every match either, because they also bought another forward. Like, I don't know. To me, Osimhen's in a great position. He still has one of his preferred partners in Kvaradona with him, and it's still a good team that I expect to be challenging for the title. And I just think it's very hard for me to envision a striker outscoring him.
So my thought process through this was like, at first, I wanted to do my same pick like last year and be a homer and put my biased opinion in there and pick Rafael Leao. But when I was thinking about it, Milan has added a lot more offensive options, so the goals will kind of be spread around a little bit more. He doesn't need to do all the goal scoring. He can also be that playmaker and creator, which he does like to do. He doesn't always need to score. And then, like you said, I kind of remembered, he finished like third, fourth, but that was on like 13 goals. So like, to be Serie A top scorer, you have to be over 20. And I really don't see that happening. And then I thought, like, when you think about the bigger teams and you're thinking about their number nines, but these big teams all have quality everywhere else and other people that can score goals. And that's why they're so good. So, sometimes you want to think about some of the lesser teams, and if they have kind of a go-to guy, they do a lot of the bulk of the scoring. I think what's the guy? I think he was on Spezia, and Torino or Salernitana picked him up in Zanzi, or it's not in Zanzi, right? Yeah. Where he had I think 17 goals or something like that, where he was doing a lot of the scoring for Spezia. So, a guy like Boulaye Dia came through my mind. He kind of lit the league on fire last year. And if he comes in again and does the same thing, he could be one of those guys that, is at a smaller club, maybe not as successful, but he does most of the goal scoring for them. So he could fight for the top. But, I decided to take a safe pick. Someone that I think Inter is going to depend on a bit more, not having a true number nine. I'm not sold on Thuram just yet, but that man Lautaro Martinez just knows how to score. Even though he's kind of like a secondary striker, he always does way better when there's like that main number nine. But he's going to be the guy for them. I think that Inter's success is going to be relying very heavily on how well he scores goals for them. And if he's on fire, he'll be on fire, and it's his season to finally be top scorer of Serie A. He's kind of been around there. He's been in the talks of one of the best strikers in the league for a while. I do think that Osimhen is a safe pick. I have no issue. And to be honest, when I was thinking about it, I was thinking the same thing like you said earlier, where it's very tough to choose anybody other than him. But I kind of wanted to switch it up. I didn't want to be boring and pick the same pick as you. So, because I was this close to agreeing, and just picking the same one. But let's have some discourse.
Well, first fact check is Nzola, who's now at Fiorentina.
Thank you.
Inzonzi
I was like, Inzonzi is
Steven Inzonzi is
yes.
Listen, I heard Liverpool are interested. That's all I'll say. Any defensive midfielder with a pulse, doesn't matter if you're currently playing or not.
Excuse me.
Yeah, I do think. Well, based on our last season preview, when I picked Harry Kane and you picked Erling Haaland, and the next day Harry Kane was no longer on the Spurs. It's not looking great for Lautaro. Maybe Saudi Arabia is calling. I don't know, but
yeah,
I do think Lautaro is a fine pick. Outside of that, I actually think it's not unlikely. I think he has a path to getting there, and Inter could be good. And Lautaro had a very good season last year. I think that really went under the radar, especially post World Cup, because he was dealing with a little bit of injury too. But yeah, I don't mind it at all. I think Inter are set for a good year, and I think Lautaro could definitely be a huge part of that. Let's do a little weekend roundup of our first weekend of Premier League action. Speaking of Harry Kane, Spurs drew in their first game without him. Harry Kane has moved on to Bayern Munich. Pretty crazy thing, all things considered, that finally got over the line. I would just like to say, we were early on the scene. I would just like to take a little victory lap. I did not have the time to go back and clip it, but I know in like April and May, we were talking about Harry Kane to Bayern Munich. I just know. I remember it. So shout out to us for being early on it. But Brentford 2, Tottenham 2, really interesting game. You saw a lot of action, especially in the first half. Died off a little bit, but you saw two things. It's interesting because both teams are sort of life without their strikers. Ivan Toney obviously serving his suspension. Brian Mbeumo steps up. Johan Visa steps up, as they did so much last season, and were able to score goals and keep Brentford competitive. For Spurs, you saw James Maddison, I think, put on a really good performance. I think I'm very happy walking away from that game with how one of your big signings from the summer performed. I thought you even saw some good movement out of Richarlison. I think that's hopeful for how this season can go along. I'd like to see Heung-min Son, get a little more involved and maybe find some confidence in the net again. But overall, I think both teams can walk away from this feeling pretty good. Obviously not defensively, because I did see both teams get broken open quite a few times. But I think that may also be a credit to the attacks. But Spurs especially, Mickey Van de Ven really impressed me. Just very, very good performance at the back, despite the fact that they conceded 2 goals. I thought individually he looked very good, especially physically.
Well, you have some new players, a new formation. They're going from playing a 3-back / 5-back to a 4-2-3-1, a more conventional formation. You mentioned James Maddison. He's being put in as the number 10, played really well. You mentioned Van de Ven, Udogie. So you got these guys that are new to the club. You're trying to figure everything out. And Brentford's no slouch when it comes to them. So they're a very solid team with some good players. And so I do think that, if this was a matchup later on in the season, I think that Tottenham comes out on top with this. I think that Son will come into his own. It's a slow start to the season for them. Life without Harry Kane is obviously not easy, but they do have players that can kind of step in and do the job for them. I'm not saying they're going to be like crazy, but I think that a little more stability 4 in the back kind of fits them a little bit more. So we'll see.
Yeah, I thought Basuma played well too. This is a guy that was kind of lost in the fray last season.
Yeah,
had a lot of hype going into Spurs and just never really realized it. Newcastle big statement on opening day, 5-1 victory over Aston Villa. Your boy Alexander Isak, 2 goals to the good to hitting his 15.5 over/under that you so bravely picked.
Listen.
Newcastle looked very good. Aston Villa looked very bad. I think Aston Villa actually did. The scoreline is a little deceptive. I think it makes Aston Villa look like they were really outplayed in this game. Villa had chances, just weren't able to find the sort of that final finish or that final pass. One thing I did like about Villa was Moussa Diaby's movement was insane. His off-ball movement was great. It's going to open it. He's going to have a lot of space to work with, and he obviously he's known for his quickness. Decision making with him has always been a little bit of an issue, but he scores a goal on his debut. That's always nice. He did have a moment where he probably should have cut it back to Ollie Watkins, a cross goal, instead took the shot on, tried to go near post, hits the side netting. Always hate those moments, but if I'm Aston Villa, I'm not lighting myself on fire over this one. I think this was still a game that just got a little out of hand near the end of it.
Mm-hmm.
But, largely speaking, it was a pretty decently competitive 5-1, if that makes sense. And Newcastle, I think, looked good. I think it's a good sign for them. It's a big statement too, especially on opening day. They get a great test with Manchester City this weekend. I'd like to see how they fare in that one. The biggest question mark for me for Newcastle all season is going to be how they manage rotation with the Champions League. That's really going to be the biggest hurdle for them.
I mean, you're talking about 2 teams that in Philadelphia, like a week before, played to a 3-3 draw. So, I mean, Newcastle just happened to get the best of Villa. And like you said, it kind of got a little carried away at the end. I did like what I saw from Villa. I didn't watch the entire game, but I did happen to catch the first half where I did see – I think I watched up to the 3rd goal for Newcastle. So I did see some things that I really did like from Aston Villa. I think Moussa Diaby is going to be huge for them. Shout out to Sandro Tonali making a huge statement for his arrival into the Premier League, scoring within 6 minutes. And also, I think he played a part. I think Isak's first goal came off of a free kick that he sent into the box, and Botman headed back across, I think, to Isak, or if I'm not mistaken. So Tonali is looking very comfortable. It seems like his partnership with Guimaraes is growing, and they're working well off of each other. And Isak is getting started already. Light a fire under him, and if he stays healthy, he's going to be very dangerous for them. This is definitely something that is a good warm up for, like you said, they have a big test in Manchester City. If they can pull out even a draw, I think that's very positive for them.
Yeah. Speaking of draws, Chelsea and Liverpool drew.
How do you feel about that?
Hate it. Hate everything. Hate it all. It's all bad. It sucks. Off the pitch, Moises Caicedo. We had a nice thing going in our group chat. Kyle sent us that Kyle actually broke the news to me. I was like, oh shit.
I was convinced that he was going to Liverpool.
Yeah, you and me both. Liverpool were prepared to break the British record fee for him. It seemed like all things were squared, and then Chelsea's like, hang on, player. You're going 1-on-1 with The Undertaker. Move away from Romeo Lavia to try and get Caicedo. Then we get locked into this awful duel with Chelsea, which really just reflected in the game itself. It was not high quality. I think the first half was good. I think Liverpool played pretty well. I really looked off of it in the last 20 minutes. I think we're maybe lucky to get out with just the draw, but midfield again, I think it was just a real weakness for them. And then we find out Caicedo is actually going to Chelsea, and also Lavia is going to Chelsea. So super cool. Love that Chelsea can just spend $1 billion, and that's not an exaggeration, in the last year. And it's all good, I guess. I guess it's just when you sign players to 8 and 9 year contracts, which, by the way, is certainly not going to blow up in their faces. I'm sure.
No, not at all.
I'm sure that they've bought 15 players that they've all put on 7 to 9 year contracts. I am positive that is not. Do not clip this and remind ourselves in 4 years when half of these guys cannot be taken off this squad because they have 5 years remaining on their deal, which is a standard contract length, 4 or 5 years, standard normal contract length. They're doubling that. so they can skate around the FFP rules. Great.
That's crazy.
Awesome.
That's crazy.
What they didn't know is that they activated Liverpool's trap card and they signed, or are in the process of signing, I should say, because who knows what Chelsea might pull out now, Wataru Endo from VfB
I did
Stuttgart.
see this. Yes, I saw
I'm
this.
not going to pretend like I know a lot about Endo. What I do know is that he's cheap, and crucially, he is Japanese. Why does that matter, you might ask? Jurgen Klopp has never won a Premier League, I should say a Premier League title. He's also never won any league title without having a Japanese player in his squad. Shinji Kagawa at Dortmund.
That is one hell of a stat to pull out of your
at
pocket,
Liverpool.
dude.
So here you go, motherfuckers. You made us pay up to get Wataru Endo, and now you're going to have to learn. Now you're going to have to find out. So
Why didn't you just get in the race for you know what? I was gonna say, why didn't you get in the race for Daichi Kamada? But you have McAllister already, so there's
no. Listen, I don't love what Liverpool have done, but if this is the Doctor Strange saw all the permutations, and this is the one where we end up as Premier League champions this year, I'll be fine.
There's the bias. There it is. I love it.
I am disappointed to miss out on Caicedo. I was fine, honestly, paying 110 million pounds for him. I don't care. It's not my money. It means nothing to me. It means nothing to me if my club spends 200 million on some guy. Cool. I think genuinely, if Caicedo came to this team, we actually would be contending for a title. I think he's that good, and I think he would bring that much balance and exactly what we need to our midfield three. I said it when we did he was on our 5 players to watch out for, that I think he would be perfect for Chelsea, and it makes me sick that he might end up there to partner with Enzo Fernandez, and that's what's happening. And I think it's a great deal. I don't care that he costs 115 million. Honestly, truly. That money's not real anyway. I couldn't care less. It means nothing to me. I hope John Henry pays $300,000 every second. I could not care less. It's not my money. Romeo Lavia also off to Chelsea. I get Caicedo. I'm not sure I understand Romeo Lavia's choice here, to be perfectly honest. I think you could have stayed at Southampton, maybe even found your way back to Manchester City next summer. I don't know. Strange choice, if you ask me. Speaking of strange choices, Wolverhampton Wanderers should have had a penalty in the final moments of their game against Manchester United on Monday, but the globalist George Soros-funded conspiracy that backs Manchester United, it seems, went against them. It was one of the most bizarre things I think I've seen happen in a while, because Andre Onana comes out and clobbers a Wolves player. They go to a VAR review, and upon the first review, even the commentator was like, "Yeah, that's a penalty. We're gonna have a penalty here." I thought the same, and then nothing happens. In fact, and then the real kicker, the Wolves manager gets a yellow card because they're clamping down on a lot of dissent this year, which is fair. I hope Jurgen Klopp does not have fines attached to yellow cards, because he is just one emotional man on the sideline. He's definitely gonna accumulate 15 yellow cards this season, but he gets a yellow card for his reaction to the penalty, and then the penalty is not awarded. It's deemed not an overturnable call. It was not clear and obvious. Almost immediately after the game, PGMOL comes out and says that actually it should have been a penalty. They got it wrong. Who does that help? No one. It doesn't help Wolves. It doesn't help teams that would be fighting with Manchester United, potentially for a title, or potentially even for top 4. It doesn't help Wolves, who could be facing relegation this season. They've lost out on these points now, or at least the opportunity to have gained points. So it's really just a bad situation all the way around. And it was honestly the great cherry on what was honestly a terrible game to watch. Wolves did break open Manchester United quite a few times. And I got to say, I'm still not believing in Wolves all that much, but it does make me a little concerned about Manchester United's back line, because they were stretched quite a bit in this game by a team that is not, I would not say is attacking talent, and verve is necessarily their strength. But yeah, maybe some things to be focused on for Manchester United and Wolves respectively going forward.
So now give me your totally biased opinion on Manchester United.
I think they should get 100-point deduction. And especially, I don't know how much we want to talk about this. They're gearing up to bring Mason Greenwood back.
Yeah, it's oh my God, it
is unsavory and bad and terrible and disgusting. I think that is our podcast statement on that.
I mean, a precedent has already been shown in the league by 2 other teams.
This one I would say is worse in that you had a video recording of him abusing his partner, threatening to rape her, and pictures posted by her that were of the aftermath of him physically abusing her. Obviously, in the court of law, the case was wrapped up. It never went to any kind of trial or anything. But
which was crazy.
Well, I think there's again, in these situations, victims can continue to be victims. I don't know. We don't know all the personal details. We know that they're still together, and that ultimately, there was no the pursuit of legal action was stopped. Nothing to do that. He didn't go to a judge and said that he was clear of these things. That never happened. I think the fact it's always more challenging when you see kind of the aftermath, right? Like we know about other players that have done similarly terrible things, but we haven't heard the audio. We haven't seen, physical violence actually being committed or the aftermath of that physical violence. I remember a lot for the NFL. Remember hearing about Ray Rice's case, and then you see the video, and it just changes your entire perspective.
Mm-hmm.
It's so much worse when you see, and it sucks that you even have to have that like visual medium to do it, but it's gross. There's really no other way to put it. I think a lot about like what would happen if someone on a team that I liked and supported or was a fan of did this, and I don't know how I could ever reconcile that. I think it's just it's a totally disgusting thing. I didn't like that they were shoving it on the women's team, that they should be part of the decision. I think
that's kind of crazy.
I did not care for it, and I think it's a cowardly thing that they're like slowly walking it out to. So that news might come out by the time that we're that this podcast has reached you or that you're listening to it. But yeah, it's and I think if I'm even taking the humanity side out of this, I think on the level of distraction, if you're just talking about removing all the emotion and the morality from the situation, this is going to be a question that Erik ten Hag is going to have to answer for the rest of the season and the rest of his career. Yep. But especially now over these next few weeks, it is going to be a constant question about what was the decision-making with allowing Mason Greenwood back? How involved were you in that process? What about this situation did you think he was redeemable or that he should be back playing? Whatever. It's going to be a circus that he's going to have to face and that all of Manchester United is going to have to face. And I think it could turn bad. I think it could go very poorly, actually. Not the greatest note to end on, but I did think we had to at least have that conversation because it's cropped back up into the conversation. We don't know when necessarily that reinstatement is going to happen. It has to happen at least by September 1st because that's when the Premier League registration is due because that's also when the transfer window ends, but that's when you have to finalize your Premier League squad. So could happen between now and then. We will see. A little bit of a bummer to end on, but you know what? You got.
Oh no, I can bring something else up to kind of lighten it before we end. And I mentioned it again. Down. Listen, I was on Twitter, and we always have you have the age old. It will be the age old argument like Leo Messi versus Cristiano Ronaldo type deal, right? I don't want to get into all that. I don't want to get into the MLS versus Saudi stuff. I don't want to do all that. I like to take the hipster approach to a conversation like this. Matt, I want to ask you a question. Who was the better Brazilian, Neymar or Ronaldinho?
Neymar.
Okay, so we're in agreement.
Nostalgia bias will lead people to the Ronaldinho path. Fair enough. Neymar, though, was fantastic. Problem with Neymar, especially in the last few years, And I've seen a lot of, because he's also going to Saudi Arabia.
Yes.
A lot of people question
That's the reason I brought it
the
up.
teams were interested in him is probably because he's only played like 30% of his available games over the last.
He has too much money for that.
Dude
for
has
how many
not
games
been
he
able to
plays.
stay healthy whatsoever. Now the French league is pretty physical. I think more physical than people realize. But yeah, he's just not been able to stay fit, and it's just you're paying that much money. Neymar is like it's just such a classic goes to Saudi Arabia type of guy.
Yeah,
Like
exactly. Yeah, it doesn't surprise me he ends up there.
No,
but
I'm
it's
actually
like,
surprised it's taken this long for him to end up there.
When you talk to a lot of people who are older than we are, right? You're talking to maybe people minimal 7, 8 years older than us. They'll have that nostalgic value about Ronaldinho and talk about how great he was, and he has this Ballon d'Or and the World Cup and this and that, and his peak was only a few years compared to Neymar, who at his prime was incredible. I mean, watching this man, and they kind of had the same trajectory, right? Ronaldinho's this young kid, comes onto the scene for Brazil and lights it up, and he kind of just goes from there, goes to PSG, goes to Barcelona. Neymar, what he did at Santos was next level. And to kind of cast, the doubters away by doing it at the international level as well at his age was something different. I mean, Neymar with that crazy mohawk and the bandage across the nose. I mean, that image is just forever burned in my mind. I think that, and I think when he went to Barcelona, he was not a product of being a teammate of one of the best number 9s ever and the best player ever. He just added his greatness to that. Sure, Ronaldinho was entertaining, and so was Neymar. I mean, he did the same thing. Neymar was more efficient. Neymar was more like put up more stats. It's I don't think that a lot of arguments hold weight when in favor of Ronaldinho. And that's the reason I wanted to bring it up. I wanted to see where you were at on that. Because yes, Neymar went to the Saudi League. I think that, you already said it. It's very obvious. It does not surprise me. No Premier League team of merit would want to pay those types of wages for a player that will play a fraction of the games. The same thing in Serie A. I mean, he was linked with teams like Milan and I think like one other Serie A team. But it's a stupid investment. A league like Saudi Arabia, where he's going to be playing stars past their prime and mechanics. So, it is what it is. I feel like he won't be injured. If he gets injured in the Saudi league, I don't know what to say.
Well, here were his alleged requests, by the way, to Saudi Arabia as part of his move. A 25-room mansion, a 40 by 10 swimming pool and 3 saunas. 8 employees, I guess, to kind of like manage this property in his personal life. A fridge with like all types of like juices, I guess. How true is this? Honestly, who's to say?
Well, he does have a big entourage and probably has
cars.
He's probably going to move his family out there.
All of his hotel, restaurant, and travel bills. Apparently, he's also going to have access to a private jet as disposable. €80,000 bonus.
He's milking it.
I'll win, and a $500,000 payment for every post or story he puts on social media that promotes Saudi Arabia. So,
yeah,
he's just really there because he loves the game. I think
the signing these marquee players is literally just promotion for this league to try and get more players out there. That's all it is. Really all it is. It's not organically growing. This is the issue that everybody has with it. And people are saying, oh, why does it have to be in Europe? Why do the top leagues have to be in Europe and this and that? Why can't Saudi Arabia be a top league? We're not saying that. We're saying that the way they're going about trying to make it a top league is the issue. You can't just buy the quality, right? What happens after you buy all this quality and the players age out and they all can't play anymore. And no team has gone through developing their youth programs well enough and their facilities well enough so that they can stay top tier for decades, like what has been going on in Europe for multiple decades now. You know what I mean? All the top tier teams have two things. They have a great transfer budget, but then they also have the facilities and the youth programs to help sustain money going in to the club, because they can sell, whatever youth products they have that don't make the senior team. That's why you see a lot of teams in Italy kind of waning off, and some are on the way back up because, they're working on the facilities aspect of it, and they're trying to develop their youth programs a little bit more. And that's why teams in England are so good. That's why you have some teams in France that have a lot of money and they can make these, great runs in the Champions League every now and then, but that's because they have these youth programs and they sell off all their products to these bigger clubs. You don't see that in Saudi Arabia. You see, we're going to sign Cristiano Ronaldo, we're going to sign Sergei Milinkovic-Savic, we're going to sign Karim Benzema, we're going to sign Sadio Mane and N'Golo Kante. Those three guys that I just mentioned, they're all Muslim as well, so it kind of is easier to bring them over and make them faces of the league. So it's all promotion. It's really all promotion to just get people to watch the league. And I don't think that it's going to produce a product that you really do want to watch. I mean,
it has no staying power. It has no staying power. But that's all we got for you this week. We'll be back next week. We'll have Premier League and Serie A action to break down for you. Second week of Premier League action, the opening weekend of Serie A to watch.
Ooh, what are our notable games for Serie A?
Nothing crazy. You got Bologna and Milan on Monday, I believe. That's really, I think, the biggest. You've got Inter and Monza, which is a pretty nice bout, but no big ones. Like we mentioned, Newcastle, Manchester City, I think, is definitely the one that a lot of people are going to have their eye on. But you also have Spurs and Manchester United, which is pretty good. West Ham versus Chelsea on Sunday. Not a bad one either. So you got some good stuff sprinkled in. But yeah, I nothing huge in Italy for the opening weekend, but still plenty of intrigue because I think the league is just so open. So looking forward to it. We'll be back next week to break all that down for you and more. Who knows? Who knows what could happen in the next like 6.5 days until then. But until then, keep it locked, keep it safe, keep it happy. See ya.